Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is Victor Shi. It is Tuesday, March 28th, 2023, and there is still no indictment against the former president of the United States, but everything we are seeing is pointing to the sign that Donald Trump is in deep legal trouble. Jack Smith is rolling full steam ahead with his investigations into Trump's role on January 6th, and Mar-a-Lago, Fani Willis, and Georgia prosecutors aren't slowing down either with their investigation into Trump's role in pressuring Georgia election officials to find him 11,850 votes. And last week, a judge ruled that a key witness or key witnesses can testify in the E. Jean Carroll case against Trump. While we don't have any solid indictment yet, we can talk about the impending legal woes Trump faces. And to do that, I'm so grateful to be joined by one of my favorite legal analysts and someone who helps me and I know so many others understand the legal news. And that person is the always amazing Asha Rangappa. If you don't know her, which I'm sure all of you do, but if you don't know her, she currently teaches at Yale's Jackson School of Global Affairs as an MSNBC columnist and has a great Substack called the Freedom Academy with Asha Rangappa. Asha, it's so great to see you, but especially during this crazy weekend, dare I say, unprecedented time.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. If I look distracted, it's because my cat is knocking things off of my bookshelf. So that's the crashing sounds that you hear. It's great to be on.
One of the joys of seeing you on Twitter, aside from your great legal analysis, is seeing Pancake, right? And his appearances on MSNBC or before you go on MSNBC.
Yes, I've really enjoyed being on there.
So I'd be remiss if we didn't start off by asking you about something I know is on the top of all of our minds, which is what's happening in Manhattan. Trump said he would be arrested last Tuesday, which of course he hasn't. Last week we saw Bob Costello, who previously was a legal advisor to Michael Cohen, supposedly dangled a pardon to Cohen, testify. Michael Cohen wasn't brought back for rebuttal, and then yesterday there's reporting that David Pecker was brought in to testify in front of the grand jury. I'm wondering, where are we in this investigation, and do you expect an indictment to drop soon?
So yeah, the writers are definitely circling way back into season one here. Okay. And people may not understand exactly what's going on. So Robert Costello, as you mentioned, made a brief appearance in the Mueller report as someone who was arguably dangling a pardon to Michael Cohen, saying, look, you can sleep well at night, you've got friends in high places, in order to get him not to flip. So he was brought in to discredit Michael Cohen as a lawyer, even though he has a sketchy history himself. And reportedly, the story that he told the grand jury is, look, um, Donald Trump had no idea about these hush money payments when they were made. Stormy Daniels came to Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, on his own, decided to pay her $130,000. Later on, Trump found out about it out of the goodness of his heart. He was like, "Oh, let me reimburse you." And so that the idea there was to not only discredit Michael Cohen, but really to undermine a legal theory that the Manhattan DA would be putting forth. Because if Trump was not a part of that agreement to pay her back, then you really don't have the intent you need to show that he was trying to engage in a campaign finance violation, right? Like
Right.
he was just repaying Michael Cohen after the fact. David Pecker is relevant because he, in a non-prosecution agreement signed with the Southern District of New York way back in the Cohen days, said and agreed that he was present at a meeting with Trump and Michael Cohen where they all agreed that the National Enquirer would catch and kill bad stories about Trump. And that, really Michael Cohen's paying of Stormy Daniels was basically a part of this larger agreement. So that's the backstory there. And, from all indications, it seems that this is definitely in the final stages of presenting evidence to the grand jury. I think the DA would want to rebut Costello's argument. They wouldn't want any. I mean, the bar for indictment is probable cause. It's not that high, but they probably would not want to take a chance that the jury could be derailed in some way. Um, Having said that, I don't know how much longer it's going to take. I mean, this is a very extraordinary indictment. They probably want to dot their I's and cross their
Mhm, mhm,
T's. And
mhm.
I think we need to remember that the only reason we were expecting something last Tuesday was because Donald Trump told us
Yeah,
so. And P.S.,
exactly.
he's like lied like, over 30,000 times. And yet we keep
Yeah.
falling for it. So I think we just need to be patient. And if anything, this shows that the DA is being quite methodical and deliberate, and, that really undermines this idea that he's just a runaway stagecoach trying to steamroll Trump.
So you had this great drawing on Twitter that kind of details the legal case in front of Alvin Bragg. For those of us who aren't lawyers, can you briefly explain what the different charges are at play in this hush money case, and which one you would think would be most successful in a court of law?
Yeah, so it looks like the kind of the basic charge is going to center around falsification of business records.
Mm,
Because in this reimbursement that Trump made to Cohen for those hush money payments, Michael Cohen pays Stormy Daniels after taking out a home equity loan. And then Trump repays him. And what he does when he repays him is he has invoice. There are invoices from Michael Cohen charging Trump for legal fees. And so Trump pays him back as though these were for legal services, even though they're
mm,
not. And in paying them back, because these are payments for quote unquote legal services that Michael Cohen will pay taxes on, Trump grosses up the reimbursement, meaning he pays Michael Cohen
mm.
back more so that after taxes, he nets $130,000.
Oh,
Okay. So um, the falsification of business records would ostensibly concern this, classifying these as legal services when they're not really legal services, and maybe these
yeah.
sham invoices or whatever. That's a misdemeanor. In order to bump up the misdemeanor, a misdemeanor is a crime that carries is punishable by less than 1 year. In order to bump this up to a felony, which carries a more stringent sentence, um, Bragg would have to show that the falsification was done with the intent to conceal or further another crime.
Mm,
So the big question that all of legal Twitter and pundits are talking about is, A, will he bump this up to a felony? Or is he only going to charge him with a misdemeanor? And if he does bump it up to a felony, what will the other crime be? And
mm, mhm,
largely people believe that this will be about the intent to um, violate campaign finance laws, state or federal campaign finance laws, which are problematic in different ways. But that's where kind of that testimony from Costello would come into play, right? Because
yeah,
it goes
yeah.
to the intent. Um, my colleagues Andrew Weissman and Ryan Goodman had a op-ed in the New York Times last week
Yes, yeah.
where they said, look, there's another crime that Bragg could use to bump this up, which is criminal tax fraud. That
Mm,
if Trump were, falsifying these documents and inflating Michael Cohen's income, and Michael Cohen is reporting a false income in order to, you know, um, get the right amount back. Maybe Trump intended to take a tax deduction on this from Trump org. That all of those could fall under New York's criminal tax statutes.
oh,
And it's
yeah.
not either or. I mean, theoretically, he could charge both, or maybe there's some other crime that we don't have any idea about, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But though that's what my chart was about, was kind of those two different pathways on how he might bump this up from a misdemeanor to a felony.
Very helpful. And one of the things that we've seen throughout this process is basically the incompetency of Trump lawyers. And you have a new piece out in MSNBC talking about how Trump lawyers might just be his greatest weakness. And you specifically write about the significance of Evan Corcoran. Can you talk about the significance of, I guess, the Department of Justice piercing attorney-client privilege and compelling Corcoran to testify?
Yes. Attorney-client privilege is basically sacrosanct. It is very
Mm,
difficult to, um, get information about communications between a client and his lawyer,
mm,
because we want that to be, um, a cone of silence, because you want to get the best representation you can from your lawyer, and
right,
you shouldn't
right.
have to worry about people finding out about it. So even when, for example, we've seen for in search when search warrants have been executed, you might have heard about a taint team. A taint team is there, which is sort of a buffer where they first go through everything that's been searched to make sure that there are no attorney-client communications
Mhm.
that might accidentally end up in the hands of prosecutors. That's kind of how serious this is.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the privilege, however, is not absolute. There is an exception, or there are several exceptions, but the one that is relevant here is called the crime fraud exception, which states that you cannot use your attorney to further or conceal a crime.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you're
Mhm.
you can tell them about a crime you already committed, but if you're using them or using their advice to actually commit a crime, that is not protected by the attorney-client privilege. And so, what Jack Smith, the special counsel, did was he asked the judge to rule that they could compel Evan Corcoran to testify about his communications with Trump because they had evidence that Trump may have been using Evan Corcoran to mislead the Department that he had returned all these classified documents when he hadn't, by signing the certification that the Justice Department had given them following the subpoena that they asked him to comply with. And the extraordinary thing here is the judge agreed.
Mhm.
She said, "Look, you've convinced me by a preponderance of the evidence, which is 51% more likely than not, that Trump used his attorney to further a crime." Um, and that means that Evan Corcoran can be compelled to testify about his communications with Trump. Like, what did Trump tell you? Did he tell
Right.
you
Right.
that he no longer that he had personally looked around and no longer had any documents at his house? And you can see why this is really dangerous for Trump, because it gets
Mhm.
directly
Mhm.
to his actions, to his state of mind, something that without piercing that cone of silence, prosecutors would not know, and they would have to show circumstantially, which is much harder.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems huge, and I also think of when you talk about Trump lawyers, just this past, I guess, couple of weeks, the depressing appearances we've seen from people like Joe Tacopina, who at one point I think lunged at Ari Melber when he presented evidence, and Drew Finley, who couldn't even admit that Trump lost Georgia. I'm wondering, do you think that these lawyers have any solid case for Trump in any of these cases? Are they doing it for fame or money? I mean, like, what is behind all of this? Because it's been so embarrassing, their appearances on TV.
Yeah, they are kind of a shoddy looking bunch of lawyers that seem out of like Law and Order Central Casting Unit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, they're not,
Yeah.
if you go back in time to, the Clinton days, and these, polished lawyers from DC and these white shoe law firms, that is not that is not the bench from which Trump
Yeah.
is drawing. Um, and they seem a little all over the place. You know, I think partly because of what you've seen. John Eastman had the crime fraud exception
Mhm,
applied to
mhm.
him. Evan Corcoran, Michael Cohen was convicted.
Yeah,
Things do
yeah.
not end well for lawyers who represent Trump, right?
Yeah.
There's a joke among lawyers that MAGA stands for making attorneys get attorneys.
Yes,
And
yes.
so I think that, he doesn't have I don't think that the top quality lawyers want to represent him. I think the fact that he
Mhm,
tends to not pay them doesn't help. I think he stiffed
yeah.
his lawyers more than once. So I think that that explains part of it. And I'm not seeing that he has, a savvy legal strategy
Mhm, mhm.
in any of these cases.
I mean, Ari Melber mentioned this last week. I mean, like, people like Drew Finley and even Joe Tacopina, they had some pretty good win records and prosecuted some pretty high-profile cases, but they're, I guess, representing Trump, and it's like it kind of reminds me of what happened with the broader Republican Party of some sane and competent people ending up falling into Trump's kind of manipulation and maybe it's fame, maybe it's power, I don't know, but it's pretty sad to me.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, they're on TV. They're going to get their
Yeah,
names known. They get to say they represented the former president of the United States.
yeah,
They'll
yeah.
certainly. I think that just that alone will get them clients, right? So if
Mhm,
that's what you
mhm.
care about, and look, let's be. I'm an attorney, everybody is entitled to a defense. So Trump is entitled to a defense. I actually think it's kind of sad that he doesn't have the best defense he possibly can,
Mhm, mhm.
largely because he's a bad client. But the reasons that these people choose to come on board, I can't say, but I'm sure that they see an upside to it.
Yeah, well, we'll I'll be watching this case closely. The last thing I want to ask you about is Fox, because I know you've written a lot about that on your Substack and you've talked about it elsewhere. I'm particularly interested in what happens if Dominion and Smartmatic prevail, and in the rare case that maybe anchors will start telling the truth to their audience. And you argue in your piece in Substack that if that happens, the right doesn't move to more moderate sources of information; they move to more extreme sources of information and channels. Can you talk about that more and what you think would happen in the case that, say, Dominion and Smartmatic prevail?
Sure. Yeah, so that Substack piece was based on a book called Network Propaganda by Yochai Benkler, and I always blank on the other two authors. I apologize. I remember Professor Benkler's name because he taught at Yale Law School for a little while. But it's a great book, and they basically analyze these media ecosystems, the right and left wing media ecosystems. And really, the right wing media ecosystem is not only untethered to traditional media, but it's like kind of in a bubble all of its own. And so, as you said, what people are doing there are they're not going to go suddenly move to like CNN and NBC, because what their purpose is in that bubble is they want an identity confirming narrative. They want to hear um, what they already believe. And the Dominion filing shows this, right? Like
Yeah,
Fox is
yeah,
saying this is not what they want to hear. They don't want to hear that Biden won. We got to tell them that this was rigged. So they are actually shaping the narrative based on the conspiracy theories that their viewers have. So if Fox starts telling them the truth, they're not going to go to mainstream media. They're going to move to other networks that tell them what they want to hear, places like
yeah.
Newsmax and OANN. Now, there might be a silver lining. The authors of that study say there might be like 15% of the audience base of Fox News that has one foot in Fox News and maybe they have one foot out and they're kind of like, they are exposed to these other media and don't really know. And this could
Right.
be, maybe this could nudge some of them. So I'm not saying that like all of them will be moving en masse, but that study suggests that the vast majority of them would remain in the bubble and just move to more extreme sources.
Yeah, which is pretty depressing. But well, I'll be watching what happens with I know Smartmatic and Dominion as well as the other Trump legal cases. And Asha, I'm grateful for all of your explanations and helping us make sense of this. Thanks so much for joining me this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone. Well, Asha is always wonderful, and hopefully we see that indictment dropping soon. But you can catch Asha on MSNBC. She floats around ABC as well. She's on CNN. So wherever you get your sources of information, Asha is probably there. And I highly urge you all to subscribe to Asha's Substack. It is a really amazing Substack, and it kind of feels like you're back at school. I mean, I'm currently a student at UCLA, but I'm subscribed to it, and it feels like I'm enrolled in another class. I mean, she has office hours. She does great pieces and explainers about a lot of the challenging issues of the day. So you don't want to miss her Substack. It's called the Freedom Academy with Asha Rangappa. It's wonderful. And of course, follow her on Twitter. She has one of the punchiest Twitter accounts I know out there, and also most informative ones as well at the same time. So go find Asha. It's amazing. I have a couple of things before I let you all go for today. The first is I'm coming to you yesterday. I got off the show and there was another school shooting, this time in Nashville, Tennessee. This was at a private Christian school. Three children injured, two other adults, I think three other adults are so far injured, sorry, dead as well. So you have about six people dead so far. And it's just, it's terrifying and it's terrible that I have to come to you again and tell you that there has been another school shooting. And also, it's terrible that I'm coming to you knowing that Republicans in the House are going to do nothing about it. I mean, we see yesterday John Cornyn basically responded to Biden's call to ban assault weapons, and he said it's just another liberal talking point. You have Steve Scalise, who is the House Majority Leader, saying that we should know all the facts, and it's just you have this party that is so beholden to money and power they will do nothing to fix this issue. And it's just, time and time again, I hope that we can change something. I hope that we can, change things for the better. But it seems like that is becoming less and less likely, at least with the Republican House. So the only thing that we can do now, if we want change, is to vote in 2024. Vote for elected officials who will actually care about your lives. Vote for elected officials who will actually, pass common sense gun reform. There's no reason why anyone in this country, and I'm open to any possible explanations, but I haven't thought of any reason why anyone in this country should have any access to military assault weapons. And that's what we know happened yesterday. The person who shot down those children and adults, it was a woman, and it was a young girl, and she had an assault weapon, a couple of assault weapons. I mean, no one should have that access unless you're in the military. And it's just sickening that you have, Republicans now wanting to raise the age of voting to 21, but they still allow 18-year-olds to buy assault weapons. I mean, it's just everything is messed up about it. Compared to every other country, we are lagging in our gun reform laws. We don't have the laws in place to solve gun violence. And the biggest argument I think for me is, we just need something. I mean, the goal of gun reform isn't to prevent all mass shootings. It's to reduce mass shootings. It's to make sure that this doesn't happen again. It's to make sure that we don't have another instance where we, where we see children tear down because of guns. It's just we need something, and what happens on a state and local level, it's great. But at the end of the day, we are a state composed of 50. We are a nation composed of 50 states, and we need a federal action. We need our Republican elected officials and our Democratic elected officials to do something about it. And just for young people who have lived through this, cycle of gun violence, we see right through what Republicans are trying to say. Their thoughts and prayers, their immediate rush to, offer their condolences, just is not going to work this time. It's never going to work. I mean, it's unless there is action. So I just want to make that clear. And just again, another terrible, terrible incident of mass shooting in this country against children, and Republican elected officials, and elected officials, frankly, doing nothing about it. So, I hope this doesn't happen again, but it's hard to hope these days. But we just have to vote. I mean, feel this anger, feel this frustration, and turn out in 2024 and vote. That's the only option we have left now in this political moment. And there was a really sobering picture yesterday. A young girl was looking out the window of a bus, and she was captured. And it's just, that's how we are. That's how children in our nation is. That's how they're growing up, and you know it's just depressing on so many levels. But we cannot let this defeat us. We have to keep moving forward. We have to keep pushing for more gun safety reforms. It's the least we could do in this political moment. So that's all I have for you today. It's been quite a consuming Monday with all that news. So take care of yourselves, please. If you have children, hold them a little bit tighter. It's just depressing that we live in this reality and that Republicans aren't doing anything about it. But 2024, that's our moment to really affect change and elect better people into office. So thank you everyone for watching this episode with Asha Rangappa. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, as I always do listening to Asha. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow for another episode of On the Move with Representative Jamal Bowman, who will talk about the latest regarding TikTok, some of the things regarding what's happening in New York. You don't want to miss that. So please join us tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, right here on youtube.com/Politicon. We'll also be back on Thursday and Friday, but it won't be me hosting. It'll be Rachel Vindman on Thursday, keeping the anchor chair warm, and then Jojo from Jers on Friday, who will keep the anchor chair warm. They have some great guests lined up. You don't want to miss that. Please join us then. I'll be back the Monday after, but I know Rachel and Jojo will keep you all in great, great company with great guests and informative information, so you don't want to miss that. Thanks everyone again for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.